This will probably be the last full build that I feature everything on because I've got bits and pieces of it all, so I thought I wanted to do one that's very thorough. Dismantling the guitar, same order as always. Undo the pickguard, slack the strings, cut the strings above the nut. While I've got the strings off of it for the first time, go ahead and check the tuning pegs. If they need to be tightened, go ahead and cinch those down. Again, not high torque, just enough. Use blue painter's tape to mask off the pickups. That way when you use the steel wool to clean the neck in a little bit, it doesn't get little shavings. Take a pencil lead to the nut. That'll help the string slip through and actually help you keep it in tune. Clean between the frets and each one of the fret wires with steel wool. I don't do this every time I change the strings, but I do it to a new guitar, as well as checking the fret ends and, if need be, taking a sanding block to the sides of the fretboard and the sides of the fret wires. There are slower and more subtle ways to do this. I'm not slow or subtle. Okay, I can be slow. Once you remove the pick guard, it's time to decide what you're going to keep and what you're not going to keep. I'm going to keep the volume and the tone knobs, but I am going to go ahead and swap out the pickups and the switch. So now it's just a matter of dismantling the pick guard and removing all the components that I don't want. I do mark them because I'm known to reuse equipment from time to time, and I'm sure I may find a use for these pickups at some point down the road. The pickups that I'm putting in do not require swapping out the pots as far as the volume and the tone knob go, but I am going to swap out the switch because although they may be humbucking and double coil, they have such a weak output that splitting them or coil tapping them doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I prefer the Cache heavy-duty switches that are available on Amazon because I've abused them in the past and not had a problem with them. I do decide to go ahead and take the volume and the tone knobs out. That way I can have full access to the pickguard because although the pickups may be a direct replacement, I really don't think they're going to fit within the confines of the pickguard. Now the good news about that is all I have to do is disconnect the hot wire from the switch and the ground, and that will put me in a good position to just go ahead and wire in all the new components at the same point. That way I don't have to deal with the output jack, and I really don't have to deal too much with the pots. One last check to make sure that the pickups actually fit within the body and don't come over the top of the neck. Otherwise I would have to route. But, like I suspected, they do not fit within the pickguard. Months ago this would have been a problem, but now I pretty much know how to deal with it, and I know how to take my time. My blue tape and a sharpie. Mark off about how much I need to take off each side in order for the pickup to fit. Now it also doesn't fit in the other direction, it's going to have a gap, but fortunately I have an idea on how to deal with that. Then I just get the Dremel out and slowly but surely take off the material that I don't need. I'm getting better at this. It helps to anchor both hands against the table and the pickguard against the surface. Then you just check to make sure that it fits. And when it does, you move on to the next pickup. Sanding helps to make it smooth, and it also eliminates any obvious spots that jut out. But since this 3-ply pickguard has white in the middle, any curve that's not exactly straight really stands out. But I have an idea that I stole from a car guy friend of mine. I clean up the surface, and then I take a Sharpie to the white, obvious parts of the curves. I cover the whole thing. Once the pickguard goes on, there's no light inside the body of the guitar, so with this black covering the white, the gaps won't be quite so obvious. They're easy to see here looking through to the table that's lit behind it, but I have a feeling that the shadow is going to really be my friend when it comes to this. If not, I can always take black vinyl or tape and mask off that hole, just like I did on the dashboard of my car when my buddy Russ helped me put a stereo in it. I'm kind of surprised at how much I like the look of the Filtertrons in this pickguard. And I'm reminded of a friend of mine who said he never really likes a car until he starts taking it apart and putting it back together again. There's something about this process that helps me bond with a guitar. It doesn't hurt that it also decreases the value to the point where it's not worth selling them. Because the pickups are dual coil and humbucking, you always have to link two sections together if you're not going to split them. I go ahead and solder the two wires to make sure that they've got a really good contact, and then I cover them with a heat shrink sleeve that I can hit with a heat gun and make sure that that connection isn't going to bump into anything else inside the guitar. It really helps to reduce the noise and keep it clean. And that's the one thing that I really want to preserve from this guitar, is because it was put together so well and it was so clean and precise. I connect the hot leads from each pickup to the corresponding spot on the switch. And of course, me being me, I either have the switch installed backwards or I wired the things to the wrong poles. But at least this time, my connections were really, really clean and didn't use a lot of solder. I also had enough sense to mount the switch into the pickguard with one screw to make it easier to flip around. Then I connected the grounds from each pickup to the back of the volume pot. Now that I have the grounds connected, I'm going to go ahead and mount the volume pot and the tone knob back into the pickguard just to hold them still to make the next part of this process a little easier. Because the pickups have braided ground wires, I'm going to cover those with a sleeve, hit it with a heat gun in order to make sure that they stay together. That way I don't have exposed ground inside the guitar itself. Then I'll take the ends that I left exposed and put them on the back of the volume pot and solder them into place as well. That way I have all of my grounds basically coming back to that volume pot. I don't know if it's possible to have a ground loop in a guitar like you can when you install a car stereo, but I've fooled with that before having to chase those down, and I really don't want to fool with that in a guitar. That's why I actually use the tab on the switch to ground the switch to the volume pot as well. Now I can mount the switch in the pickguard and then test it, find out that it's wrong, and flip it back around the right way. I don't put the second screw in until I know it's in the correct way. Tighten down the volume knob, tighten down the tone pot, and as you can see, I've connected it because I've already been checking it all the way through to see if there's ground problems and also to see if there's an issue with the switch being in the incorrect direction. One disadvantage that the Ibanez has over the Squiers is the interior does not have what they call a swimming pool route. When you combine that with the fact that the front edge of the pickguard has to slide underneath the fretboard, anytime you put a deeper pickup in it like I have, it makes it more difficult to slide back into place. It also means that you have to be very careful of the wires and the way that they run between the pickups because there's only a small channel as opposed to a wide open space. For someone like me that leaves a lot of wires behind, that makes it more difficult to put the pickguard back on and to get it to sit flush. But eventually, with a gentle hand and a willing spirit, it does click into place, and then it's just a matter of going very, very slowly, not to pinch wires, to get the pickguard back in place against the body so you can put the screws back into it and finish the reconstruction. It's not always easy, but it is worthwhile. Hand tighten the screws. I cannot say that enough. Hand tighten the screws. I cannot say that enough. Hand tighten. You get the point. Like most of the custom builds I do, I feel compelled to put a different colored switch tip and volume and tone knobs on the guitar. I don't really care about the numbers because I never look at them. I just rotate them with my pinky anyway. But that's the final touch. Putting those plastic pieces in place. I'm really kind of proud of myself because this string change was one of the quickest that I've done. 7 minutes and 23 seconds. I'm getting faster and faster and making fewer and fewer mistakes. While the string through may not make much difference as far as sustain or tone goes, it does make changing the strings easier because I don't have to get a set of tweezers to fish the wire out of the surface one. Here we are.
Well,
That makes me happy.